Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction. I guess we should talk about being scared tonight. And we should talk about fear. And I wanted to talk about, first, the pure stuff of fear. And that's childhood fear, right? Being afraid as a kid. And you know, I now have this new book, American Scary. And as interviewers are coming up to me and they're saying, Jeremy Dauber, you're an acclaimed cultural historian whose book the LA Times called casually magisterial. I don't know why they open like that, but they do. It's very weird. What made you want to write this? And, you know, and I talk about Stephen King and about how I read it as a child, you know, and all that. But that's not the real story. The real story I want to tell you tonight, the real truth of how I got into this horror, the real story, the primal trauma. And now I'm going to warn you, as I tell this story, that it may not actually be true. But it feels true, and I think it's mostly true, and I think that's the important point here. It's how I remember what happened anyway. So it was a long time ago. It was back in a mystical, enchanted land we called the early 1980s. And I was a kid, and we went over to some adult's house. I don't remember whose house it was. I don't remember it all. But I do remember one thing, and this we knew coming in, which was they had HBO. Okay, that was what they had. HBO. It was extremely exciting because we, at that point, did not have HBO. And I had been told by friends of mine who had HBO that if you were lucky, and if the timing was right, and if you were able to, you might be able to see a lady in a bikini. This was very exciting to young Jeremy, and I wait until the adults are talking about something very boring in the living room. I think it was probably about real estate or something like that. I don't know exactly. And I snuck down the hall. Now, one of the things, I am an academic, and when I teach, one of the things that I talk about is that some horror fiction is conservative by its nature. And what that means is that there is a crime, and then that crime is horribly and terribly punished. You will see the relevance of this in a moment. I will go down that living room, to that hall out the living room, and I go into the TV room. And this is in suburban New Jersey, and I go in, and there is a television, and it has, for those of you who are younger than me, you may remember this, it has one of those boxes on the top of it. That means, in fact, they have cable, and they have HBO. And I turn on the television, and lo and behold, the television comes on. I turn it to channel 14, which was HBO in New Jersey, and there is a lady in a bikini. This was amazing. I mean, I didn't know that that was what it meant, like on-demand television, right? I mean, it was incredible. And there's this lady in a bikini. She is in a hot tub. This is fantastic. Someone knows where I'm going with this. A hot tub. And this is great. And all of a sudden, I'm watching this. I'm enjoying this. And a hand reaches into the frame and turns up the temperature of the hot tub hotter and hotter. And then a man in a mask comes into frame and strangles this bikini woman to death. And I'm like, what the hell just happened here? Right, and of course this is the thing, right, that I can't tell anybody because I knew that I was not supposed to be watching HBO. Right, I knew that if I told my parents what had happened, they would be like, well, you know, that's what you get for watching it here. Now, of course, I should say now I'm a little further down the road, and I have children myself, and if they came to me, that was exactly what I would not say, right? I wouldn't do that. I would say, you know, it would be comforting and all that, and it wouldn't be such a big deal. But when you are 8 or 9 years old, you know, forget it. That is it. So I'm being honest with you, good personal friends right here. This was this thing that I carried around with me for many, many years until tonight's exorcism. So for years, as a result, and this became inexplicable to my parents, I could read horror, but I would not watch anything because I would say it must be too scary. I would not watch the George Hamilton Dracula parody Love at First Bite because I was sure, and it drove my parents to distraction, but of course I would never tell them why, and they are not here tonight. So I guess that I undertook in some ways this book as a kind of catharsis, as a kind of therapy. But, you know, there's an easy path to this for you. If you have some kind of similar experience, and everybody who I've talked to about this has some sort of, we had this sort of primal experience as a counter. So I'm going to give you kind of an easy 3-step process to dealing with this in your own life, okay? So, I don't know if you came here for advice, but I'm going to give it to you anyway. First, and this is a very important step, get a university to hire you, okay? Very important. Get a university to hire you and tenure you and let you teach what you want. Second, teach a class, decide it could be a book, get Evan Hansen Bundy in the back to edit it. He's very good. And then third, and this is the part that you can really do at home, watch 700 horror movies in a row in chronological order. Yeah, that's scary, right? Yeah. So the thing is, and I'm going to tell you, the thing is that I know that the boiling frog metaphor, right, is actually just a metaphor. It's not true, right? That if you put the frog in hot water and you sort of turn up the temperature, like what happened to poor nurse Karen Bailey in this movie, it actually will jump out. But that's not what happens sort of as you watch these movies. You get more and more sort of inured to this. But when I talk to my graduate students about their dissertations, I tell them that there is such a thing as the magic bullet theory. And the magic bullet theory suggests that there is always something waiting out there to get you. Right? Now, in the case of someone writing their doctoral dissertation, it is an article that is almost precisely on the same topic as you that you have not yet found. And until you have found it, you have not yet done your work. That's the magic bullet theory as applied to PhD dissertations. As applied to primal traumas being worked out by watching 700 horror movies in chronological order, it is that scene. That scene I remembered that was waiting out there for me. That scene of the hot tub and the bikini and the man in the mask. And I knew it was coming, and I knew when I saw it that I was going to stroke out. Fast forward to somewhere around movie 475, right? And I'm watching, and it's Halloween 2 from 1981. And I'm watching the movie. Michael Myers is on the loose. He's in a hospital. And some kind of some kind of memory is beginning to tickle the back of my head. And then I see the hydrotherapy room. And I'm like, oh, this is it. It's coming. And Michael Myers steps into frame, and he strangles the woman in the bikini. And my reaction was, Because I had watched 474 horror movies before that, and it was really pretty much fine. And so what was surprising was that felt extraordinarily powerful. That felt extremely not afraid, right? Not to say that there weren't other movies that I saw that scared me. They certainly did. It wasn't to say that in the process of writing this book, I'd learned that a lot of what scares you as you grow changes. It wasn't that I also had learned, of course, that over time, in America, what scares all of us, even if the fears at heart are basically the same, of walking down those hallways towards a fate you don't exactly know, but you know is coming, right? Those might stay primally similar, even if the details all change. It may also be that each one of us finds our own particular horrors that are more or less affecting to us, right? Right now, if you had asked 8-year-old Jeremy what scared him, he would have said vampires and that guy, right? Right now, vampires are okay. I'm fine with vampires, right? It's other things that are more scary, about harm to my family, harm to those I love. Those are the things that keep me up at night. But what it seems the most to me is that ultimately what I was able to do in writing this book, and if you choose to read it, hopefully what you do in reading this book, right, is by encountering these fears, by taking them for a walk, for talking about them and listening to them in these fictional contexts, in these conversational contexts, in these theatrical contexts, you exercise some nature of control over them. It's not an original insight. It goes back to Aristotle. But I think it's a powerful one. And I think it's one, really, that allows an explanation for why it is that so many of us are drawn to something which, on its surface, is really something that should drive us screaming away. And I'll leave you with this. It doesn't really matter in what way you choose to encounter those fears, in what way you choose to think about them, to explore them. The haunted house of horror and of fear has many different rooms. And whichever one works for you is great. And all I ask is that when you walk into that room, you take a look around, and the door swings slowly shut behind you, and you feel a small, whispery voice say something to your ear. Turn around and say, you know what? I saw you in, and you're basically a bad puppet with a sort of strange special effect. It's not such a big deal. Thank you all very much. Have a good night. Thank you.